Well, here's a 2004 Chevy Impala. Done some other work on this car before, so you'll probably recognize it if you're looking at our Chevy Impala videos. Basically, this car, when it was purchased 6 months or so ago, this car had a failure of the ABS system, a failure of the traction control system. And so basically the ABS system is really going to be the key. If you see a traction control indicator, traction control system off, traction control error warning on the dash, and you also have an ABS code, go to the ABS code first. Most likely the system has been disabled internally because of the bad ABS sensor, or bad ABS system I should say. So this particular vehicle has an ABS code, so we're going to work to try to figure out what's going on with that. It also has a symptom of ABS is trying to engage at low speed. Again, I can probably tell you the answer already, but we'll wait and investigate it and see. But I'm guessing it may be a wiring issue. It's kind of common, I'm afraid, with this particular car. So let's get this job started and see what we can come up with. We have the car powered up, and it's been running for about a minute or so, and you'll notice that there's no indicator lights of any kind. So we're going to back it up, and there it goes. But as soon as the wheels begin to move, we get this surface traction system indicator. We get it, it's here. We get ABS indicator, and then we get the traction off indicator. So it's telling us there's definitely something wrong, at least with the ABS system. So we're going to start there and get to reading those codes. So here we go. Turn the key on, and then we're going to come down here to Diagnostics, hit enter, and we're going to look at the ABS system on a US vehicle. This is a Chevy. Where are we at? GM. We gotta find the 10th VIN character. Let's do that. Okay, so we made all our selections. And we're gonna enter. Nope, that's erase codes. We don't want to erase codes. There we go. Current GTS codes. Communicating with vehicle. Please wait. Link error. Oh, turn ignition on. That's smart, huh? So back it up. Try again. No codes are stored in the module. Let's see if there's anything in history. Left front excessive wheel speed sensor variation. So that's the driver's side front, so that's where we're going to start our hunt. Here we go. Alright, let me clarify, add to that. This is left front excessive wheel speed sensor variation. There's also where are we going now? There's also left front wheel speed sensor circuit open or short. So we need to start on that driver's side. Now, these cars do have a tendency to have problems with the wiring harness going from the ABS module down to the actual wheel sensor. So we need to be sure and eliminate that as part of our diagnosis, and before we go changing out wheel speed sensors, which I think will just be the entire wheel bearing housing assembly. So all right, let's get to it. All right, well, let's talk a minute about what we're seeing. I told you that the driver's side, left side, ABS sensors showing several codes, one of which is basically no signal. And so somehow we're getting a miscommunication between the ABS computer and the from the wheel sensor. So what could it be? It could certainly be the wheel sensor. On these vehicles, certainly do not assume that. Again, diagnose, test, and I think what we're going to find out here is this is not the wheel sensor. And again, that's a fairly costly, laborious task that at the end of the day you wouldn't have succeeded. So what we want to do first, how we're going to eliminate whether it's a sensor or not, so we're going to unplug the sensor. And the first thing you want to do on this vehicle is unclip the sensor plug from the side of the rotor bracket, or the wheel bracket there. Come on. Alright, so once that's off, now you have access to your plug. So let's see if I can do this where you can see it, not so much maybe. There's a latch here, we'll lift that latch and then just disengage. One thing you always want to do immediately is check your plugs, make sure they look clean, make sure you don't have excessive corrosion. That could be your problem right off. In this case, they do look pretty clean. And so if we take and we take a voltmeter and we set it on ohms, in this case we got it set on 2000 ohms or 2k ohms. Hopefully you can read this. Let's see. Yeah, maybe I can't do this so good. There you go. Right now you see it's an open circuit, so I'm not hooked up to anything. So let's see how much voltage or how much resistance we get across this once we take our two probes and probe the two electrical outlets from the wheel sensor. This is from the wheel sensor. So if you look, you can look down there and see, hopefully we got about 1.15 kilo ohms, or 1,115 or so ohms in the wheel sensor itself. Now, so what does that mean? Does it tell you anything? Well, one way to kind of get some ideas is to go to the other side. We've also pulled the wheel on the other side. You go to the other side and you probe it, and guess what? You get the same resistance through the Hall effect sensor in the analog brake sensor. So that tells me likely that the wheel sensor, analog brake sensor on the wheel is fine, and therefore we need to look elsewhere. So let's figure out where to go from there. Since we've eliminated the wheel sensor from the equation, then we can go on and look at some other options. So if the wheel sensor is good, that costs you, it saves you a few dollars potentially. Now we have to consider this wire. This wire from the wheel sensor runs up to the ABS computer. This wire is part of the wiring harness. It's not single wires running up there easy to get to, but this wire could be bad between the ABS computer and the wheel sensor. So what are we going to do? Well, I'm going to go ahead and unplug the ABS. By the way, I should mention, negative battery cable is disconnected, has been disconnected. Okay. So what I can do is go up there and unplug the ABS computer, probe and try to find these and see if we have an open circuit. Can't find these on the ABS computer plug. We probably got an open circuit, at least one of them. And so let's go see what we can do in that regard. Okay, what we're looking at here is the ABS sensor or the ABS system computer plug. So the first thing you think is no big deal, we'll just unplug this. Well, let me tell you, it's not trivial. First things first, you've got a red locking pin here, and this needs to come all the way back. Now you need to push this center tab in and pull back this slide. Now let me tell you, that went back easy, because I'll give it up and tell you I've already done it. Initially it did not want to pull back easily. There was dirt, dust, debris, down inside the slide. So push that in and take your time, be patient. You don't want to break this plug, so let this slide back, and then it's just a matter of unplugging the computer. I'm gonna get my hands down in here with the camera up in the right. Now the computer's unplugged. So we've got a series of pinouts. This plug, if you look at this plug, shows to have quite a few holes, but not all these holes actually have brass inserts. And so I can tell you, because we've pinned it, it's these, looking at this thing looking down on it like this, look on the right side, number 2 and number 3 are the relevant ones for this particular wheel. And I also pinned out the other side, and what I found was that the other side on both legs of that wire basically gave me zero resistance, maybe 1-2 ohms, something silly like that. It's basically a zero resistance. But I'm going to show you the side that's showing a fault gave us some resistance that it should not have. So let's go to that and take a look. All right, so I began by simply running us a wire from the pin, stuck the bare copper wires twisted together inside where the pin goes, and I run that up the outside of the car, and I've taken it up under the hood. So we're going to use that wire to help pin out that lead, that leg of that wire system, and see what we get. Confirm that my wire's hooked down on the other end of the lead, and it's hooked to the other end of my multi-tester. Got it set on 200 ohms, and I'm going to go out and pin this out. And of course, you won't know initially necessarily which one it is, but I can tell you I did pin it out, and it in fact is that pin right there. Now, when I say pin it out, I checked its resistance with my voltmeter. Excuse me, I was on the wrong one. So there's a good wire, 0.786. It's going to drift around a little bit of resistance due to the length of the wire. So that wire to this pin looks plenty good, and so that is it's the third pin on the plug bar as I was showing you earlier. Now let's go look at the second pin on that plug bar. So I went down to the wheel and I switched the wire to the other side, and now I'm going to pin out this second. Now look, what should be 0.7, 0.5, 1.5, anything like that, you'll notice is drifting around 100, 90, 80. And if I move this plug around, I can actually make it go up and down a bit. So something in this wire system is askew, and we need to figure out what, if anything, we're going to be able to do about that. Now I did check, I got, there you go, 112 ohms. Certainly shouldn't be reading those kind of numbers, so it tells me that something's wrong with that wire. Now I did pin the other side as well, and the other side, both wires, you want to make sure both wires showed zero resistance, 0.567, something like that. Basically zero resistance on both legs of the opposite side, which is actually the longer wire, so it might even give you slightly greater resistance. So what's it say? Well, one of the wires from the wheel sensor to the ABS computer not working right. So let's go see if we can figure out what, if anything, we can do about that. Well, what we do, we went in and took this plug apart. Hopefully you can see down in there. Basically this cover goes on the back, and also requires then that you remove that slider that we had to slide to get the thing unplugged. And I did all that just to access and see what I could see about these wires. I don't see, in this case, let me get my hand up out of your way. Not so much. This green wire, you can see it under my finger there. That is the wire in question. The yellow wire is the paired wire that goes down to that speed sensor. Now, if you'll notice, if you can see it, inside this, inside this harness, we have twisted pairs, it's called. Twisted pairs exist. There's also a twisted pair, the one we're working on. Basically, I see 4 twisted pairs on this wiring bundle. And what that tells me is probably the 4 wheel sensors. And the 4 wheel sensors have twisted pairs, and this is intended only to reduce interference, noise interference with the output signal from the wheel sensor. So so we've got this yellow and green twisted pair. So what are we going to do? This, somewhere in this pair, this green wire is corrupted. The only thing I can think to do at this point is basically run a second set of wires, twisted pair, terminate them here close at the end of this block, solder them together, and hope that we're okay. My concern is if there's a fault in the wire at the point where it connects to the computer plug, replacing that twisted pair is not going to fix anything. So we'll have to do a little investigation, figure out what we're going to do, and then I'll execute. I'm going to review, I guess for my benefit, not yours, where we are, because some time has passed since the last clip. But we determined that the wire going to the driver's side analog brake sensor, ABS sensor, was bad. So what are you going to do? You can go back from both your plugs and cut it off and replace it, but what if the failure is at the plug? Then what are you going to do? Well, that's my concern, is I can go replace the length of wire and still have a failure, so don't see any sense in that. So we're going to try to replace all the wire if we can. Now what I've done here is I've taken apart the computer plug. You can take the back off the computer plug, and then if you look on this plugs area here, you'll find a white tab right there. It's basically this showing up there. You pull that out, and then next thing you know, this plug will come out the back. And then if you push the wires up, and the wires in question for us here, these two that are poked up, you can pull the wires up into the housing. So I think we can basically replace these all the way back to these little plug elements that go into the computer. And be careful, we don't want to mess anything up, but I think that's doable. So it tells me, we can replace the wire all the way to the computer, which is good, comfortable. Now we just got to figure out down here exactly how we're going to replace the wires going into this plug. Tempted just to go see if I can find another plug, but it's potentially going to be bad too. So we're going to try to push these connectors through. Generally speaking, these connectors will tend to push through and out this side. That way when you plug them in, obviously you don't want to push them back that way. So generally they want to push out this direction. We're going to have to go see. So we're going to see if we can't replace this wire. Initially when we replace it, we're going to run it along the wire bundle. We're not going to bother putting it into the wiring harness until we're sure that we have resolved the issue, and then we'll go through that hassle and headache. So anyway, let's see what we can do. Well, I'm gonna do one final segment here. You can see the plugs back together there on the analog brake system. I did not end up pulling those pins. I pulled them actually, but to actually get them away from the wire, that was just not reasonable to do. So cut the wire off just a few inches back from the plug, and we've tied a new twisted pair from that point down to the tire. And again, we cut the plug at the wheel. We cut it just a couple inches up from the end. So I guess I was wondering, is the brake, if the brake was at the plug or the brake was in the wire somewhere in between. So I went ahead and wired it up and reset the codes, reconnected the battery cable, obviously, reset the codes, fired it up, and it works. So far at least. Backed it up. Before you could reset the codes, you could back it a couple of feet, hit the brakes, and the codes would pop immediately. That's not happening now. So drove it around for a few minutes. It didn't pop a fresh code, so I'm thinking it may be the issue. Right now what I've got, if you can see it, there's a twisted pair right here, red and blue, that I made up. They're not in the wiring harness. I'm going to attach them to the wiring harness. I did manage to tuck them into their proper wiring conduit further down into the wheel. I need to fix it up here in this upper section. I'll get to that. Main thing right now is I wanted to see, was it going to work? So apparently somewhere in that wiring between that ABS computer plug and the wheel plug on the driver's side, we had a fault. So we're going to see what it does. We're going to ride it a little while. If it's all good, I'll make this fix just a bit more permanent, but it's not a problem as it is, but it could be more permanent. I hope this is useful to you. Do not just go replace ABS wheel sensors unless you want to squander some money. I mean, sometimes they're bad, you got to replace them, but make sure they're bad before you replace them. Otherwise, you're just going to be a little lighter in the wallet and still have a problem. So anyway, I hope this helps. Thanks. Bye.